VR.
Oh, really? Which cooking
Yeah,
games did you go to?
it's a surprise. Mhm. Oh, I wonder who else is gonna show up today. There we go. Put that there. Oh, hello, Scott.
Hi there. Hello. I was just doing a microphone check. Does it sound okay?
Yeah, does mine sound
Yeah,
okay too?
sounds
Oh,
okay.
great. I think the little voice like noise background filter that I use, like the settings changed, so I was a little worried that my voice might need setting changes. So I'm glad to hear it worked.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Oh, great. Yeah, gonna get started a little bit past the hour this time. I just had all the doohickeys to set up.
Yeah.
Thanks for your patience. Yeah, welcome, Bonnie. Also good to see you. Crescent Dawn,
Hello.
Sim. Thanks for the audio checks. And Carl, yeah, this is the is Thursday still rotating for you now, or did that change permanently, or did it change back?
I'm hopefully Monday I'm going to talk to HR and keep my current schedule. But if it does change, yeah, I'll be available every Thursday, but no longer available on Sunday.
Gotcha. Well, I hope whichever side of the coin works best for you is where it lands. we'll send some positive energy.
Either way, kind of like I'd be glad to be able to go to all of the Thursday Firefly stuff, but also I wouldn't be able to do the Sunday actually watching Firefly. So both ways. I'd rather keep it out as currently.
Is there a severance scene that could properly foreshadow the conversation that's coming up with HR?
I don't even want to think of it in that context. That makes it a lot feel more impossible.
Nah, I'm sure with the value you bring to the team, they better listen if they know what's good for them. Yeah. Welcome, KT.
Hi.
Good to see you. We'll go ahead and get started here. Thanks for kind of giving me a grace period to get the event started, especially over all of the events. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get all the individual computers going for the stream and whatnot. But yeah, here we are at the final chapter of the book, the completion event, the moment to reflect and celebrate the experience together. And I just wanted to extend a really special thanks. If work, like we were talking about there, Carl, if work wasn't so kind of chaotic for me, I would have really loved to do something special, like maybe a new world that we could have had the event in, but just too crunched for time. But I really wanted to let the community know just how much I've appreciated doing this. This, I mean, I could have read the book, but this was like another level. This was so much fun to do and so interesting and such a deep dive with so many personal viewpoints and shares and experiences that, I'm not sure we could have achieved, any other way. Thanks for putting the time in, the personal time to come and share and listen, and be heard and read and learn. It's all been just a wonderful experience and kind of checking a life goal box of reading and understanding this book and doing it in such a unique and positive way. And thanks also for supporting our norms. When as group leadership, we were initially kind of pitching the idea for having an event like this. There was a little bit of a fear factor, this could potentially trigger people or be misunderstood, or, what if we mismanage a share? The mindfulness and kindness of this community, never even came close to putting us in a situation like that. So, thanks for just being you, and also for following, and honoring norms to keep this, not only a safe space, we want it to be safe, but also courageous and brave. Every little personal piece that we put out on the table, is a personal risk. It feels sometimes like, your body can tell you, do not want, you don't put that out there, and, especially if we have a history of familial or friendship abandonment, we want to be really careful how much of ourselves we put out there, because holy smokes, what if that's the last thing that they'll tolerate and then they'll just leave us for good? No logic or reality to that feeling, but your body tells you that. And just thanks for like I said earlier, kind of being the mindful and kind and compassionate group that you are. And welcome, Theo. Yeah, also good to see you. Glad you could make it. So starting out with chapter 20, it's all about kind of theater and communal movement. The kind of expressive things that we can do with our bodies that can also tie into our mental health. And this, the way the chapter started out, this really caught my attention. I try not to just type the book verbatim and make it a slide. But this statement just I felt was really powerful. Our sense of agency is defined by our relationship with our bodies. Our waking and sleeping and how we eat, sit, walk, define the contours of our days. Able to breathe fully with an awareness of our inner sensations. So it just kind of got me thinking, like the way that we wake up, the way that we brush our teeth, the way that we walk to the kitchen and open the refrigerator. Like these are all movements that sort of help define like our presence and our mood. So not just in a intentional movement or a theatrical sense, but just everyday life, the way that we open our car door, the way we take the garbage out. These are all expressions of how we feel. And the little micro adjustments that we make to that can also redefine how we feel. So I just really got kind of captivated by this sentence in the beginning of the chapter, and I read it like a few times just to absorb it, because I feel it was a really kind of cornerstone of the book. And there's a lot of power in healing through theater, and fortunately, many parts of the Veterans Affairs and Veterans Support communities have discovered this. And you can find these organizations that set up classes and community theater style events for veterans to, not only take up a hobby in acting, but, maybe even just come in and act for the first time to try it out. And, these events, I think, as Dr. Vanderkolk talked about, like scientifically, if you have these kind of PTSD patterns and behaviors, we talked about how trauma gets kind of baked into our nervous system, and you're constantly in fight or flight. It affects how well you can articulate. So if you're living in that and suddenly you walk in and you have this theater experience, which is all about expressions of emotion through your body, through the body's language, and how that can reconnect your mind and your body, perhaps in a way that you're not accustomed to, and is very healing and kind of freeing. So one of the things I really liked hearing about these processes is they often had like an after, like a post-event kind of gathering where people would connect and share. And I loved that idea, because you're creating all of this personal like healing energy through this acting performance type of experience. And then, you're able to communally like take that energy and share it and receive others. So, I'm kind of make a note of that, like going on throughout life, is like, if you're ever like purposefully healing as a group, like how important that kind of after discussion to kind of hallmark the experience with extra connection. I just found that to be like a genius part of the process. And things like collective communal movement came up in the chapter too. And I was thinking to myself, like concerts, um, personally, there's a lot of kind of stress that comes along with a concert. Right? First, you have to absorb the ticket costs. Like, my goodness, to go to a concert anymore if it's a known artist. At minimum, you're looking at these like $80, $100 ticket prices. So, my goodness, maybe it's worth exploring some of the more like local bands, to have an experience without breaking the bank, but you got to get the ticket, you got to find a way to get there, whether you're driving or taking the bus or the Uber. All kinds of effort. And then when you get there, you're surrounded by strangers, right? Like, everybody's trying to get to the show. And it can just be overwhelming, like all of these people. And you get into the concert and it's like shoulder to shoulder. But where's the magic come in, right? It's when the music starts, when the artist comes out and starts playing these melodies, and suddenly, like, this crowd that you were so stressed out in, like, has a rhythm to it, like, has something in common that they're connecting to. And it really can be like a magical experience to be in a crowd like that, that's just feeling the music and kind of sharing that experience. And I was thinking too about like flash mobs. As silly as that is, they have groups that kind of pop up locally, and you got to get together and practice that stuff too. So it's very like community oriented, but also activism, right? Like if there's a cause that you can align with, and they have meetings and these group marches. Like, if you think about, walking down the street, maybe you're even locked arms together with people that you share ideals with, and you're out kind of promoting this message, but it's movement and it's communication, through your presence. So this was a really good addition to the book. The information that the book conveys is finding this way to move, but not just, by oneself, but through communal connection. And welcome, Heyu. I'm glad you could spawn in. Good to see you.
Hello, thank you.
And even in the most kind of heavy circumstances. So this is some photographs of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was arranged after apartheid was finally overturned in South Africa. And this committee of people arranged a process for people that both participated in the oppression of apartheid and also victims of apartheid to come to this commission and tell their stories, very graphic images of all kinds of violence that you can imagine from that experience, recorded and broadcast on television. And even demonstrations of how people were tortured, because one of the requirements for being granted clemency was you had to demonstrate that you were acting based on a political order or ideology, and it wasn't just a personal some type of personal objective, but you're acting like as part of the official party. So they would demonstrate, how they tortured people, and, family of your victims would be there to say, he's not telling the truth, or he didn't tell the full story. So you can imagine the emotions that were circulating in this process. And one of the fascinating things to come out of this was the Archbishop at the time, Desmond Tutu, would kind of recognize when things got overwhelming to the point that people were shutting down or there was breakdown in communication. He would hold these traditional like singing sessions or traditional dance, like everybody stand up and let's move or sing in a unison. And it really reset like the mood in the situation to help kind of move through to the next stage. And there's lots of historical documentaries on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Desmond Tutu also wrote a book about it called No Future for Forgiveness. And I'm endlessly fascinated by this process because this war-torn, segregated nation like came together to try to reconcile and move forward from the experience without just turning the scales politically the other way and basically repeating history over and over again. And it's got criticisms too. Some people will criticize that some war criminals, war criminal level people got off without the amount of accountability that they deserved. But there's also praise for the process too, as it avoided the kind of backlash and recidivism that the other side would receive normally when there's finally a coup that replaces the people in power. So I wonder if humanity can really learn from this and potentially make this kind of a model for resolving conflict, like not at a person-to-person level, but at a national level. Maybe we'll also need something like that here in the future. But Desmond Tutu, we lost him in 2021, a super unique guy. He kind of became known for really spontaneous dances. He just loved the way dancing feels, and he tried to share it wherever he went. Really unique individual. If you ever get a chance to read a book, I feel like his books are really good. And also, finding valuable scientific knowledge, through really dark circumstances. Music and moving as a community in cadence, like actually became a strategic advantage in warfare. Generals throughout history have written and documented that, armies that march in cadence with these musical components, whether it's drums or bagpipes or flutes, that experience of moving to the music, like as a group, like was sort of this mental reset and wellness factor that actually became an advantage over opposition armies that didn't do it. There was this kind of bonding and organization and recovery that came with the process of going from one place to another and using that as this tool to get like the trauma of combat out while you were going, to the next conflict. So, really interesting to think that in the middle of that horror, you could insert this, very human connecting type of activity. And it's recognized as being advantageous to furthering your interests. But yeah, acting is kind of said at times to be embodying emotion, the action of embodying an emotion or a feeling. And if you're familiar with Shakespeare, so many of the stories are tragedies. All about betrayal or assault, murder, and destruction. And what makes this a really unique and valuable marriage of trauma and Shakespeare is that if you are going to act as a process of healing, as part of the healing process, people can really identify with Shakespearean characters, with these tragic figures, because you can link your own personal experience to the characters, and then you're embodying this familiar emotion that your body's been trying to communicate. But in order to function in society, you may have been pushing that emotion, back into a box. So acting a tragedy to connect with trauma, is a valid form of the healing process. And some baby steps towards acting. You don't want to just get up on a stage in front of an audience. Acting is a skill. It takes a lot of practice, especially to get comfortable with embodying emotions in public, in front of others. So some of the fun things I noticed from the book was blindfolding somebody and then leading them through an obstacle course. This kind of helps, break that isolation. We're kind of in our own little bubble, and here now we have to have physical contact with somebody, and they're dependent on us to be their eyes. There was another exercise making eye contact past the point that it's comfortable with a stranger. It's as we talk with even our friends and family, the eye contact is kind of kept at comfortable levels, mostly. So to just basically stare into a stranger's eyes, it has an awkwardness. And the point of the exercise is to embrace that awkwardness, because that's the type of awkwardness that you can feel when you're embodying this emotion in front of others. And George Braham's contribution to this topic too was actually making up hip hop lyrics in your car. So if you're stuck at a traffic light, maybe making up some new lyrics to a song, and kind of letting it rip, even if it's terrible. You've only offended yourself. So it's something kind of fun. But and also there was this exercise they mentioned where they try to make the room really crowded, maybe get into a room that's too small for everybody and have everybody kind of start walking from end to end. And if you ever bump into somebody, you have to be super dramatic, you've been injured and fall on the floor and express this heinous crime has been committed that somebody bumped into you. And I thought, oh, they must watch soccer, because these people will run by somebody, and if they think the ref is looking, they'll just act like they've been shot. And I thought that would be something super fun to try in VR sometime too, if we get our motion trackers on and just act like a crime has been committed if somebody invades your personal space. And of course, schools recognize the power of this, performance-based healing and learning to, re-embody your emotions if you've been through trauma. So there's a program that is a fun little play on words called Trauma Drama. And it's skits designed around really common bullying and isolation type situations that students face. And these are stories written by students, that are likely things that really happened. And they can be varying levels of severity. But the students would act out these on stage, these kind of skits of somebody being sort of canceled or cyberbullied, or physically beaten. And in some circumstances, Dr. Vanderkolk and his colleagues observed that audiences would a lot of times take the sides of the aggressor, like, yeah, get them, like that was sort of the culture that these bullies were thriving in. But through the process, they noticed that that empathy for the victims in these scenarios really started to grow. And, people started opening up when they felt safe being vulnerable and not having to like toe the line of this group creature of like creating victims. But, again, like I really credit the book to emphasizing the post-process discussions. So not only would they act out this skit, but then they would sit as a group and sort of share like what came up for them as part of that process. And I thought, like, what an amazing thing to do in schools, to really help people like empathize with other people's situations, and also the communal aspect of being able to share, what came up through your experience by witnessing or playing a part in those skits. So yeah, lots of power. And in the theatrical and movement processes, like I'm still, really much of a novice in terms of any of these as a skill. Like I've not done community theater. It like terrifies me, to be honest. Dance, it has to be, really dark with a few drinks having come and gone. So I know that it takes kind of courage to commit to this path, but I trust the book that there's a lot of healing power in it. So, maybe someday, we'll see, but it's not something I've experienced personally yet. So yeah, like an event epilogue, just some things to kind of take away from the book. If I were describing the book like in a nutshell, I think it all comes from these like negative external influences, that we experience at some point in our life. And unfortunately, what it does is it manufactures this like internal voice or this feeling like it almost kind of seeps into your bones, and you get this like inner critic that's like, not only like externally are you experiencing these consequences of other people not being able to regulate themselves or taking out their bad situations on you, as somebody that's vulnerable. And it sort of gets amplified, and it creates these internal feelings. And it gets, as we learned from the book, it reprograms your nervous system too. So not only do you have this kind of negative wave of internal feelings, but your whole like nervous system gets short-circuited, and suddenly like parts of your brain are kind of shutting down or compromised. Your breath is more shallow. You're more emotionally reactionary than you'd like to be. It's difficult to sleep. Your heart's racing. Like all of these consequences come out of it, and that's something that I really hope, if you've experienced trauma or somebody that's going through or having been through a trauma, the science of that it's not just something like you decide like you're being dysfunctional because you didn't decide to just kind of power through it. It's like, no, your body like changes, and if you don't work on reversing or mitigating those changes, like it becomes difficult to break out of that pattern. And there's this big theme in the book about disconnection of mind and body, that your body has all of these sensations, and sort of to survive like all of this negative feedback, and the body's really truthfully honest about how it feels. But what we can learn as a skill is to sort of just turn off the volume of the body, and then what happens is your body is just continually shouting like, hey, this doesn't feel good, this is wrong. But to function as a family member, or as a friend, or as a coworker, or just as a citizen, you suppress these bodily feelings so that you can be productive. And unfortunately, the consequences of that is you lose your ability to hear what your body's telling you, and you kind of lose half of yourself, and your identity takes a hit. Things like discernment and executive function, like our frontal cortex, our problem solving, and our ability to have abstract thought, all of that gets compromised and starts shutting down. Your creativity, which Dr. van der Kolk said is part of how you can plan, is planning is also creativity. You have to visualize something changing. So planning to get out of the situation itself is compromised. Senses of belonging and deserving can get warped, and eventually it can even take a toll on our physical health with high blood pressure, migraines, hives. These can be symptoms that the immune system gets compromised, and your body's not only screaming internally for help, but it's also like physically protesting this experience. So a nightmare, right? It sounds like a nightmare. So what in the heck do we do? What do we do about that? And if I were to make like a Maslow's hierarchy style pyramid of healing from trauma, the base level, the foundation to build is survival. You may currently be in the situation that is the trauma is coming from. You may be in a familial situation, or a work situation, or a relationship situation. Like it might be happening right now. While you're in the thick of it, it's not really a conducive environment for healing because you never get a rest. You never get a break or space, for it to properly happen. So in that situation, like the only thing that you need to concern yourself with is just survive it. But try to make that plan of how do I get to safety? How do I get to a new place, a new way of life, a new, just a way to get out of the situation that is causing so much harm. And once that's achieved, it's really hard for the body to realize it. Once you've arrived at safety, you have to intentionally slow down. Like you're still in that fight escape. Is it safe? Kind of a state of being. So once you've survived and found a safe place, the next step is just to be like, right? Like just realize that you are now safe and begin kind of slowing life down. And through that process, like reconnect, and this has a duality too, like reconnect with yourself, like in order to survive trauma, we've done, we've experienced changes in our body, like our limbic system was so active, just emotionally reacting to everything because it was in survival mode. And that can be a form of disconnecting with the body too. Like your problem solving and reasoning centers are compromised. So how do you re-engage that? How do you let these systems like come back online and resync, the way that we function the best at? But also reconnection to community, right? Like these are the times when you can really, start finding like real support, real compassionate and kind people to be a part of your journey. But most importantly, find that inner kindness. This can be so hard when you're in survival mode, when you've learned survival techniques and ways of life to just get through really emotionally difficult situations. Kindness can just get kind of discarded, like I can't afford it, right? It's really good to rediscover that. Things like gratitude practices, they sound super cliche and and a bunch of hooey, right? Like what if I'm just thankful for something every day, like that helps somehow. But, really, like we talked about in the very first slide, like, how we move through our day is what defines, how we feel. So if we're trying to hurry, like making our breakfast and we're, almost breaking dishes, having them bounce off the sink and stuff, versus mindfully making, a tea or a breakfast, that's like a gift, like that's a gift to my future self. I'm making this wonderful meal. Like these are little like gratitude nuggets that we can feed ourselves all day long. Not in a survival mode. Remember, if you're surviving, that's like your only duty, like survive. If you're escaping, that's your only duty, escape. But when you do find the space, that's when you can really engage finding that reconnection with yourself and being able to be kind back to yourself. And, maybe the super advanced course of surviving and healing from trauma is the forgiveness stage. And I don't even necessarily hold, people to forgiveness. I like to let my friends know about forgiveness, but not make them feel obligated because it's a really personal journey. Like I kind of look back in my past now and I don't really think there's anybody I hold to any kind of grievance at this point. Like everybody that I've encountered in my life that has done harm to me, like was also just doing their best. Like I've come to understand that. And, I've, also practiced a lot of self-forgiveness. When you're in a survival mode, you are not always the best human being because you're prioritizing survival. And, that creates scenarios where others get hurt or you're breaking moral boundaries that are difficult to reconcile. So forgiveness is not only for others, but, also for oneself. And forgiveness doesn't have to mean something's okay. Like you're not saying like, oh, it was no big deal. It happened so long ago. I don't even think about it anymore. What forgiveness is you're processing what happened and you're sort of releasing the emotional power that it carries as a memory. So when you think about it, it's not like, oh my God, like this memory has now just like put me back in that traumatized state, and I'm having to calm myself down just from having thought about it. Forgiveness is, oh, there's that memory that contained that lesson that I'm really grateful I learned. So that's sort of the wellness ninjutsu that is forgiveness. And yeah, one kind of real baseline saying, I love to go back to Winston Churchill's saying, is if you're going through hell, keep going. If you're able to survive the trauma, there is a healing path, ahead. And if you can trust that, maybe that helps. And, kind of wrapping up some of the personal wisdom here is, my mistake. If I go back like 12 or 13 years, I can remember myself meeting with counselors and kind of asking this question, right? Like, I'm like a natural problem solver. Like, I work in IT. Like, IT is my vocation. It's solving complicated problems. Like, the more complicated, the more excited I am to tackle it. Why can I not figure like this out? Why is it so complicated? Why can't I just choose to not have this way of thinking? And after all of this time, I've realized that I had the script backwards. The main area that trauma comes from is your body. Your body is guiding your emotion, and your emotions inform your thoughts. So here I was thinking, like, if I just understood what trauma is, I could just fix it by changing the way I think. And it's like, no, I had to learn that trauma is also part of your body. And when I started focusing on the body with, compassionate, mindful friendships, and with meditation and yoga and going for walks at night, like, these are all things that got me reattuned to my body. And I started hearing like what was coming up from my body. I started understanding the process of how I emotionally reacted to things. And it still went on for years. I would still emotionally react, but each time I would understand it a little clearer, and eventually like gained the skill to sort of get in front of it and say, like, yeah, I'm really angry, but this time I'm going to choose to, not throw the coffee cup through the window. And, this time I'm not going to, pound my fist on the counter. Those really kind of emotional reactionary choices, you begin to have a choice. You begin to have the pause that says something really activated my system, but let's take a moment here to really discern, how I'm going to choose my way through this. And, when you start gaining these skills, you begin to recognize your emotional and your behavioral patterns that are trauma informed, and it's just a really rewarding and incredible process, but it is not something you learn overnight. Even when you learn it, it's not something you can achieve overnight. It takes a long time, and it takes commitment, back to yourself. So when you've survived trauma and you've escaped it, and you've begun the process of reintegrating your body and mind, be kind to yourself in the way of giving yourself time, giving yourself years to practice. And every time you feel like you failed at healing, like, just answer that with kindness back to yourself. Like, I'm just going to continue trying, and, be really patient, and just trust that it's coming. So kindness, is a practice, and you don't just jump into a football game or a soccer game for our European friends. You don't just jump into a game and score a goal. I mean, the odds of it aren't zero, but they're like 0.1. You have to practice at kindness. If you feel like it's difficult for you to achieve, types of trauma can lead you to reject kindness. Sometimes if you've experienced a lot of trauma in early childhood where your emotions, were dismissed and you weren't felt as important, being complimented and being kind of put in a communal limelight in a positive fashion can actually feel uncomfortable. Like I'm being exposed. I don't deserve this praise. Like I didn't do it for praise. And it takes patience and practice even to be able to accept compliments. These are the kind of sinister harms that emotional neglect and abuse can do. So, the best practice for kindness is to actually treat it like as a practice. If it feels really difficult to extend grace to oneself and give yourself a positive affirmation or credit or permission to just take a break from something you're obsessing about, and you can't overcome your mind or your body's desire to just keep going through that emotional pattern. Give yourself the kindness and say, okay, we tried this time, but let's try again. Let's try again when I get the energy and the wherewithal to do it. So extend that grace to yourself, because if you're trying to heal and it's not happening, and your internal reaction to that is to punish yourself for not achieving healing, it's like just a continuation of the trauma, right? It's like trauma begets trauma. So if you can catch yourself, being like, I know I can be better, but if you're not reaching your own goals, you're sort of using the stick. Catch that, like recognize that, and learn to soften that, because I've realized that it's not necessary or productive to punish oneself, for not achieving these like unattainable timelines. So that was part of my practice, to learn the patience and say, oh, fell off the wagon today, but just let's get right back on it, try it out again. So in the fun way, I like to play with the words like you deserve failure, because failure opens up an opportunity to practice, and practice is like 99% of healing, just continually practicing something new. So the inspiration for the day I found, but I also felt like I had to add an adjustment to it, because it wasn't like 100% where I wanted it to be. But healing is an art, and I love that right off the bat, because you can understand the science of how our bodies work, but it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's like an art form. It's different for everybody. We're all in different places. We all react in different ways. We all came from different experiences. It takes time. It takes practice, and it takes love. And here's my adjustment to it. It takes years. I'm not even kidding. If you're just like today setting the intention to heal, like don't expect it to take months. Like it just it takes a long time to unwind things, one thread at a time. And to be truthfully honest, I don't even know that it really takes love. Like, loving and compassionate communities, like, I think are something that you'll find, almost as, finding compassion and kind friends is like a symptom to healing. Like, when your helpers show up, it's validation that you're like on the right path. But I don't think it really takes love to heal. It takes kind of courage and commitment to decide that you want things to be different. That you're hoping to find the discernment that trauma kind of stole. Like a fortitude, maybe is another word that I'm looking for, a determination. I think love comes through the process and not necessarily has to be like a catalyst. So that was my reasoning for, changing somebody's timeless words. I'm sorry about that. They are very beautiful, but I just wanted to add that component. So yeah, it's time for some reflections, and thank you, Simulations, for providing some really thought-provoking, reflective questions on today's chapter in the process. And I also invite you to, bring anything up. This has been a 20-week journey together. So any kind of reflections in that context. And as you know, my offer is always just to say hello to, like, just, love hearing everybody's voice. And I also wanted to say hi to Lao Zhang. So he's going to sleep, so he might have had to dial out. But thanks, Lao Zhang, for posting a message in the Discord. We do see it now, and yeah, really happy to see it there. But yeah, it looks like we got. Is that Theo? Yeah, okay, Theo. I'm so used to seeing like the Greek and Russian characters.
Yeah, I just changed the name. Seems like a good time to change it too. Like, just to change most people know me by Theo, call me by Theo. It's better to have the name out there.
Yeah, I like to recognize that. Sure.
Although the straight name Theo was taken, so I couldn't take it. But yeah, I enjoyed this chapter review a lot. Something noted here was really important, the whole movement of the body, really like expressiveness of like how you can actually expand flow into your movement and allowing like a sort of like, it's very interesting. Like the points here I keep like synchronizing. My brother actually is somebody who does a lot of like is really interested in acting, and he does sort of for I forget what it's called, where you are one of the actors in the Not Scary Farm, like scare props or scare people that walk around and sort of like act upon their character. I think like something like that is something, it's very interesting, like just to reiterate that sort of plays or theater or any of those things, like being able to act upon your expressions is very, very important, because it's a way of like flowing into not only your trauma but your kindness and love and compassion, and it becomes a very like a beautiful thing to watch. One in particular I remember was it was my Kundalini teacher's birthday, and there was a dance for him, and the dance was very passionate, very, very open, and just such a gift to watch something like that and express it from a very strong person that was doing it. Like had a lot of trauma conditions in their life as well, losing a couple of loved ones, and but having such strength and resilience to express into that sort of art is healing, as you put it too, Scott. Like, very beautiful.
Beautifully said. And what more meaning could you put to performance than sort of expressing gratitude or ceremony like towards someone? I loved the idea that they marked that occasion like with a special dance. Yeah, that's really something. That must have been something to witness.
Mm-hmm. And there was even also someone who sang in Sashi's language. I believe Hindu, and I always remember that that song that they sang together, the couple and the student. Very touching, very meaningful.
Yeah, I remember listening to one of those really powerful podcasts like of This American Life or something like that, and it was instead of sending these young ladies to a juvenile detention, they went through like a kind of like an educational program where they were released like back to their parents' custody. And one of the things that they did was that as a group, they wrote this like apology song to their parents. And oh my God, when they sang it, like I was like teardrops in the car, like listening to this podcast. Like it was so just from the core, their core being. So I think there really is an enormous power to this performance aspect that I personally haven't tapped into because I'm a bit chicken about it. But I love witnessing and hearing the stories. I vicariously heal through others' courage. And
you should link that in the Discord. I'll probably also link that video. I usually have it unlisted, but every time I've ever watched it back or I ever hear it, I mean, it's not just you cry because it's so painful and all that, but also it's so beautiful and it's so meaningful and it's so deep.
Wow, yes, please post the link to that. I'd definitely love to, kind of add the actual video to the memory. So yeah, next time we talk about it, I'll have seen it. And we have welcome T. I was glad to see you come in. I had at the beginning of the presentation like a slide with pictures of everybody that's come, and I realized I don't have a picture of you. I was like looking through all of my photos, and I'm like, dang it, no, we never took a picture together. So I'm glad you're here, so I can personally thank you for being a part of the whole Body Keeps the Score series. And let's see, we got Crescent Dawn up on the board there. I'll pass the microphone over to you. Yeah, there we go. Oh, what a beautiful shot. Oh, I'm not hearing the audio right away. Is there a microphone shenanigan going on?
I think my audio is working now. I hope.
There we go. Yeah, Scorpions again.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
The meta curse, I swear. Yeah, so going off of the questions on the board, so to speak, I don't know why I snapped back into like college lecture mode, sorry. questions number 3 and questions number 5 really like stand out to me, and kind of, I guess they kind of, for me at least, could be answered one and the same, so to speak. I remember like up until very recently, like attending, more of these events and just getting closer with people, I was very, very afraid of feeling vulnerable and like showing any weakness, like showing that I can't do something for once in my life. I remember like growing up, it was really like, at least where I'm from, if you showed any sign of weakness or any ineptitude or any, inability to accomplish something, that was basically just like the end of that. Like it was a literal like life or death kind of situation. Like you're only surviving because you're useful. And it wasn't until very recently, like I was able to start accepting that I don't have to be afraid of feeling, or like I don't have to be afraid of feeling vulnerable or, being accepted or anything like that. And I guess the reason why that goes hand in hand with, like question number 5 is like showing that vulnerability has allowed me to get incredibly close with people, and it's allowed me to share and gain more perspectives on life as well. And it's been an interesting road, for sure. It's been a very recent road for me. But attending, this has helped me a lot and has helped me gain a lot of experience, kind of like you said earlier, Scott, like vicariously healing through others, so to speak. But I find it really interesting, kind of the difference between like when I first started attending versus now, and just the difference in perspectives that I have on life as well. And yeah, it feels good now to be able to express that and be able to confront those fears. And I remember kind of like what you had earlier on the board about Winston Churchill's, quote about, like walking through hell, just keep walking, right? I have a very similar motto in life that I learned a long time ago from like riding motorcycles. And I remember after I got in my first like motorcycle accident, the EMT that was responding to me basically told me, take it easy, but take it. And I've always lived with that motto of basically like, take it easy, but don't forget to just take it still, And applying that philosophy into confronting the things that make me very afraid has been very beneficial. And yeah, it's been an interesting experience to say the least. But yeah.
Oh, that's a beautiful, yeah, just like Reese's peanut butter cups. There's no like wrong way to heal, like if yeah, it's like that saying that like you can't love somebody until you love yourself. Like I always try to challenge that, because it's like I think somebody can show you, like how to love, like through loving you, and like sometimes you just need like a guide. And I'm so glad you tackled this question, because like I was reading through the questions and I was like, I don't know like how to answer that one. It's so like kind of like an emotional tongue twister, like how did you like take your shields down and it like worked out, like it's but I think that's a really wonderful way to express it, is like it started to help me identify to the question, because like when you're learning to build like yourself up again, and you find out you have a problem solving skill, like a lot of times you become known in your circles for that skill, and people will come to you. And then it's like, oh my God, if I don't solve this problem, like I'm going to get abandoned by this tribe.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
That's an accomplishment to actually like not deliver, but prove to yourself, like you're still deserving. Like that's really impressive to have accomplished.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Like super um super identify with that feeling. Like I like this is one of my favorite things to practice right now, actually, and may have come through in the presentations, but failure, like how you react to failure. So like, lately if I drop something, or like I'm cutting an apple and I cut myself by accident, like rather than having these like really strong anger and self-blame kind of feelings, like I actually find it sort of funny. like like these little points of failure that open the door for practice, because um like what was the way that I was trying to say it? It's just the feeling, of failure, like achieving a comfort, like with it, so that when it happens, like you're not compromising yourself by being so self-critical that you literally shut down or become like emotionally reactive, because that doesn't help. Like a situation where something's considered failure, like that could use like an on-point self, and like you're not on point if you're beating yourself up over what happened. So like learning to laugh at my failures has been like an interesting practice. And I've started to come to enjoy failure. So maybe it relates to this question in some way, is not only to experience failure in a situation where it's visible to others, and just like breaking the ice, but like getting to the point where it's kind of so not a big deal that it's actually also humorous. And so yeah, thanks for bringing those thoughts to the surface, by sharing.
Of course. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Absolutely, anytime. And Carl, yeah, I'm so selfishly hoping we get you on Thursdays, but also I know that's inconvenient. So I hope you win.
Well, but I want to watch the show too on Sundays.
Right?
But I mean, yeah. Either way it goes, I'm not going to get the full Firefly event, which is regrettable. But yeah, I've been trying to kind of crystallize some ideas here, and honestly, Crescent kind of said a little bit of it, like, and just kind of quickly, anecdotally, like on that, like question 5 thing, like even just last night at work, like we had a couple of employees had a little spat, and then, they kind of came to me because our actual soup wasn't available, and kind of wanted this, do something about it. And it's like, it's not my place to do anything about it. I'm sorry. But also, being honest with them and kind of like clear that it sucked, and that like it definitely can kind of showing that weakness part of it, telling them like sorry, I can't actually do anything here, like I can tell you how to approach the boss, any of that sort of thing. But again, here I go rambling. As far as just like a general commentary here, though, I think the I've really enjoyed this event on the aspect of, like, I feel it's really hard to describe I think in a way we just adopt kind of the negative terms. At least I don't hate doing that. So like I think of myself as like a woke modern man, when everybody was calling things people social justice warriors. I was like, that doesn't sound like a bad thing to me. I'm that. I'm pretty sure I'm that. Like, and a lot of this kind of modernity, however we look at it, does, I think a lot of these ideas are rooted, in the time, in the specifically, the guy who wrote this book, whose name's escaping me. Like, so getting to see a lot of the origins and the actual formative kind of, where they were saying, that to us it seems obvious, but back then it was novel ideas about how to address, trauma, and actually examining the mind in a kind of more sensible way. At least, maybe it's just the way I've been programmed by my upbringing, but the world as we see it today, I feel like is just so rooted in a lot of these ideas that, as far as I'm seeing, we're like kind of first really being put down, and not necessarily put down in this book, but those people, those times, those studies, and this is like the earliest example. So there's a couple of people that I've even kind of mentioned the event, and they're like, "Oh, that book," like, yeah, that's a hell of a book there. And so I've just really enjoyed getting to see it through your eyes, Scott, and the about halfway I've gotten through the audiobook myself. So yeah, those are my words. I'm done now.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I, from the experiences and the different events and from the stories you shared at work, you really have this like universal dad quality. Like, I hope you don't mind me saying that, and it's not like super weird.
No, I get it often.
You're like the number one dad, like universally. Like, I want to put you as my emergency contact.
In every reality.
Right.
All Carl
Can
the
you do
Clown.
my VR emergency? But I also, like, I've seen you not only speak the values of what we can refer to as the woke like backlash, but I've seen you demonstrate it in different circumstances too, and there's a military term called breaking the hammer, and what it means is that, yeah, like the anvil is so strong, like the blow's coming, you can't avoid it, but the anvil is just so strong that the hammer actually shatters when it hits, and like that's kind of what I look at as the fortitude it's going to take, like, our community to get through this. Is the blow's coming, like, no matter what, but we have to break that hammer that they swing. And I think, like, holding the line, like when people either consciously or unconsciously like perpetuate those really harmful beliefs that sort of keep the status quo, because that's the pushback, right? Is people have self-interests in keeping the status quo because they're the beneficiaries of all of these ways things work. So they, through the process, they sort of perpetuate these ideals that get perpetuated sometimes unconsciously or unintentionally. And to be that level of warrior that pauses the conversation and says, wait a second, like, let's talk about what just came up there. That takes a lot of courage and a lot of compassion. That doesn't go unnoticed. Just thanks for being a part of that process.
Thank you as well. Thanks for the event. It's great. Can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, I really hope Firefly can bring out the group creature. I've adopted that word. Hey, if that's acceptable to plagiarize, I do like that term.
It's real. I'm glad it's spreading. It's a way to honor that there's an entirely additional presence that is a culminative effect of all of us, and if we can make organizations have the rights of human beings, this is a way to bring the spirit of human-animal synergy into the forefront of our awareness. So I'm glad you're using it. Yeah, so I was going to go for... which question? I don't know quite what to say about number 4, because that's kind of my life's work, is how do we make safe conflict experiences, how do we build that muscle to disagree and stick it out? And I guess one of the latest answers that I've had to that is, if it's okay to say this, our creative dance on building this event. And we went through several rounds of kind of struggling to know how it was going to work with the structure of Bridgemakers and what you were visioning and figuring out where those visions overlapped. And so I think that in itself was a practice of us staying and trying again over and over for both of us and for everybody present who witnessed, these moments that just kind of felt tingly and tiring, and to get to this final chapter and realize, like, we did it. And you did a lot here. And there's something so brilliant about showing up and telling the story we have to tell instead of waiting for the right person to come along and tell our story for us better than we could or whatever. And so it's been a kind of gentle rewiring for me. My exposure to this book was through school and also just the self-help circles that I was in and whatever, but it was very kind of like intensively focused on the justice for those who survived trauma kind of vibe. And I only see that in hindsight because of how you've held this and how, part of the fruit of this conflict was we stuck it out, and then Sim came along and started putting the questions up. And that kind of community spirit that made it work and built that bridge and kept building it until it worked. The pauses that we've had to take in this series, like there's been so many pieces that were clear, understandable exit points for a volunteer effort, where we just wouldn't move forward with it, or it would show up outside of Bridgemakers or whatever. And I think that we've grown more muscle on how to say, I don't know, or let me think about that, or sometimes not following up and sometimes doing it late. And we've had all the human things, but we've also learned how to follow up after those moments and check in and explain any other perspectives that felt important that maybe got missed. So I'm just really recognizing some of the answer to number 4 for me lately is this event and you and the practice of trying again. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a beautifully said, and I can echo some or reflect I think some of the experience too, because I talked about failure kind of in a humorous sense, for the most part, because that's the funnest way to talk about it. But there were moments in the discussions of this event that I felt like I had failed the discussion and the connection. And my default response to those situations is to feel, undeserving, and it's something that I need to retreat from because I'm not doing it right. And, question number 4, I think what it's all about, it's kind of coming in a lot of layers here. That is a situation I normally would have ran from. And if it wasn't for your effort, I may never have recognized that pattern and actually tried something different. And I've kind of learned that you can fail in your friendships and it doesn't destroy the friendship. And it's kind of like almost like a familial a way of relating, where you cannot always be perfect, but still have a strong connection. And I really appreciate learning that lesson. That's a lesson I'm gonna continue to practice and to grow on.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, there was a true resiliency in this entire event process, and now I feel like if there are other events, getting scheduled with Bridgemakers and people are like, oh, well, there's going to be a month-long place where I can't do it. We'll be like, oh, we do that all the time. Just come back and pick it back up. And we've made space for quite literally the pause, and had it twice in this series. And that pause can be so valuable, to get to miss the event before it's all the way over, to reflect on what am I going to do with this ritual now that for at least the next few weeks I don't have a Thursday night event, right? How do I if when I hear the title "The Body Keeps the Score," I'm like, oh, the score where I lost over and over again. And if the score is a new score, and the score is how to build that vitality and count. I don't know. I struggle with the word failure because it feels very self-judgment or judgmental. But I would say, falling apart is closer for me. The dissonance, the disappointment, the falling apart. How do I make that part of the rhythm, and just schedule my falling aparts and your falling aparts, and just be like, yeah, we need to budget for some disagreement time, and just make that part of the journey. I think this book gave us the faith a little bit to keep trying and persist.
Yeah, I like that. And recognizing the self-judgment in those times where we feel like we're falling apart, and instead of being like, oh, you're doing this again, like, no, this is just the time where I do this, and this is a normal part of me being me.
Fall season, right? Do we accuse leaves of failing or trees of failing because they lose all their leaves?
Right.
Or do we say, I'm so glad you did that. That's a really important part to do before the next cycle, where you shouldn't have all that juice up in your branches, or you will crack and fall and break. So, yeah, seasons.
And giving oneself that space, like, first of all, like, recognizing it for what it is, but then also giving the self permission and the grace to be like, I don't have to be productive right now. Like, what I have to do is honor, what I'm feeling. Like, that's
exactly.
That's a skill, right? I think that's a skill, and it's a great rewarding thing to practice. Thank you for emphasizing that.
Yay.
And Chris and Don, I see you back on the board, so I'm excited to hear if something came up.
Yeah, my attention was kind of brought to question number 6 as well. Kind of going back off of like what I just talked about with mine about the feelings of vulnerability, right? And that big fear, and how that led to like allowing me to be closer to people. Number 6 is a really interesting question, and I think, in my opinion, I really like it because I guess, kind of going off of like how I was raised and the things that I work with all the time, like doing like crash investigations as well, right? Like, you always look at something and you're like, why did that not work, right? And then you're kind of picking the pieces back together of like, uh-oh, I dropped this bowl on the floor and now I have to pick up all the pieces and glue it back together, right? Again, through this like series of attending these events, I've realized like a lot of my survival strategies kind of don't hold up very well in certain scenarios. Like, I can't, you ever heard the saying like, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail? There's various situations where like I try to approach everything like an engineer, right? And it's like sometimes it doesn't work at all, sometimes it really feeds back into that like feeling of like wanting to be more vulnerable and like accepting that I can be vulnerable. is accepting the fact that like not every survival strategy that I had as a kid works now. Like more recently, I've learned, you know, like I guess as my body's keeping the score, so to speak, I've learned that my past survival strategies of like pushing myself to my absolute physical limits isn't good for me anymore, and I'm understanding that I am only getting older, right? And I need to take better care of myself, otherwise I'm not going to age very well. And you know, things such as like realizing that I can actually talk out problems now as well. And not having that previously gave me a much bigger hurdle than I expected, transitioning from a child to an adult. I remember like whenever I first started out in college, everyone always thought that I had it made because like I was the most adult, quote unquote, out of anyone, because I knew how to do my taxes, I knew how to drive, I knew how to like, I excelled in education, right? But at the same time, I couldn't excel at anything else unless I was in that specific scenario of what is considered traditionally as an adult. I, you know, struggled a lot communicating my emotions, and I was very afraid of myself, and I didn't allow myself to feel any emotions. And I didn't realize just how bad that was up until very recently, where I started allowing myself to become more vulnerable and share my past scars, you know, and realizing that it doesn't have to be that way, and I can allow myself to heal. And yeah, I just kind of like, I had that in the back of my head after answering the previous two questions of, I guess that was a triple feature of questions right there. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because it caught my attention and I found it as a really good question.
Yeah, I'm like super glad you did, because it reminded me of the concept of muscle memory. I'm not sure if you heard like that term before. It's really common in sports. Like somebody that plays hockey will practice like shooting the puck like 250 times a day, you know, because it creates like a muscle memory that you almost don't even have to think to do. And you know, recently I've had a couple of visits to the dentist where they're showing me like parts where I can have like plaque build up, and it's like I brush my teeth all the time. Like, how am I having plaque? You know, and it's like my muscle memory for brushing my teeth is not like getting that spot. So I've started brushing my teeth with my opposite hand to like relearn like what spots to you know aren't getting hit. And I think that can translate to like an emotional sense too. Like if we're reacting like a way that has served, it's hard to unlearn that, you know, like that reaction is getting you through situations. You know, maybe it's taking more effort than it needs to, or it's creating more conflict than it needs to, but it's like a muscle memory. Like a situation occurs and that's like my immediate reaction for handling it. So to start recognizing it, because I can tell you, aging is a process that kind of continues to march. So, you know, pulling all-nighters, you know, in your 20s is a lot easier than your 30s, and in your 40s it'll put you in the hospital. You know, like so, you do want to challenge these, you know, patterns of emotional, you know, reaction, kind of muscle memory. So I'm happy, you know, really to hear that that's coming up for you. And also, like, I guess it's so funny. I got to know you during this period of time in your life because you seem so articulate and communicative and sharing to me. But it's like hard to picture you, you know, being like the one that doesn't talk and or doesn't like reach, you know, for that level. So I guess lucky me, you know, that I'm here when you decided to share, and I'm really glad that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad I get to share it too.
Nice. And yeah, we got simulations up on the board too, so I'd like to throw the camera over to you if that's okay. And yeah, you got the floor.
Yeah, so I wanted to answer question number 3. What emotions are you afraid to feel deeply? So for me, this is kind of a tricky one, but my answer to that is that the emotion is love, right? For me, especially when it comes to trauma as well, it's like, do you wait until you're fully healed from your trauma and then you allow yourself to love? Do you wait until you're fully healed and then you decide to start a family? How does that really work, right? It's like, that's something I feel like I'm like, okay, let me not get into any relationships or not even think about love, not until I can fully heal myself and until I feel like I'm ready. And then I remember we had a conversation where you said, you're never really going to feel ready. It's a lifelong process that you're going to have to go through. And yeah, sometimes it can be like a moral dilemma. Sometimes, like, is it okay to start a family and have kids if you're still not fully healed from your generational trauma? It makes more sense to fully heal yourself first so that you don't pass that down to your kids. I don't want kids at the moment or anytime soon, not until I at least fully heal myself. But the whole thing about just acknowledging love, whether it's romantic or platonic, that is an emotion that I feel like I'm definitely afraid to feel deeply because it's a really scary emotion, right? Anything can happen. And then there's like different attachment styles, like some of them is like anxious attachment, and then there's avoidant attachment. I definitely fall into the avoidant attachment style. So it's like, it's like you also don't want to hurt anyone. That's another big thing that I have, that I don't want to, get into like something and then, I get too close and then I get scared and I run away. It's a really big thing. But yeah, that's an emotion that I'm really afraid to feel. But I'm working through it, and hopefully I can fully overcome it someday.
Wow, yeah, that was a really deep share, and I just want to appreciate, being willing to talk about love in like the fear category, of love. Love has a lot of fears because you're essentially like opening the door to your heart to somebody and saying like, I hope you're careful with this, in some ways it kind of brings me back to the inspiration quote and why I sort of had an aversity to the love component. Because I feel like a healing journey like is a door that you don't want to put a bunch of locks on, and like I feel like these sayings like, you need to learn how to love before, you can do XYZ. Sometimes doing XYZ is how you learn how to love. And I just feel like as a society, we sort of put all these preconditions on doing things, and I don't quite like know why we do it. Now I'm not hoping to convey that it's not good to be conservative about when to fall in love or when to be open to it or if to even do it. Like these are very personal choices. I think the skill with trauma comes in recognizing what is a personal choice versus like a conditioned pattern. And to kind of speak about some of the topics of the book, some of the people we learned about in the book faced horrendous abuses by their caretakers, and sometimes, into adulthood, that experience can come with us, and we think that like the abuse we experienced from our parents was like how you communicate love to others, and it's like that traumatic abuse sort of informs like our feelings about love, and you know, it can be scary that you care about somebody and you know, you don't know how to carefully hold their heart in your hand because you're still working on it too. But if there's an ability to recognize the personal choice in the equation and to navigate the personal choice, you know, I always encourage my friends to kind of deprogram from the conditioning and don't let that like be your guide for when or how, and to, you know, practice finding like intrinsically like what is it that you're wanting from the scenario. So I hope, gosh, I hope I'm giving good advice, because this is such a important place, and I'm breaking the rules of the event to even give advice here. So dang it, I'm a hypocrite. I admit it. But it was just so lovingly said. You know, I hoped to share some life experience for me, which was I kind of allowed that door to open in relationships that I had regrettable experiences in, but have led, you know, me to learn more about it, and you know, I think they would say the same too. You know, that, you know, obviously we didn't last, but it was a learning experience, and it gets us to where we are. So there's pros and cons. I think recognizing and making the personal choice is the big challenge.
Yeah. Well, big shout out to Scott. Thank you, Scott, and everybody who attended. I have to go here, but you're all welcome to stay. Do we want to grab a group photo for whoever's left? We can sit under. Let's sit under Scott's revised version as the acknowledgement of where it really is at.
Yeah, I think KT might be listening. Are you there, KT? We're gonna take a photo. No pressure to be in it, though. I just wanted to make sure you knew.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. All right, what's our word for the event series? No pressure. Is it yours? Score. Nice. I like it. The body keeps the score. That's great.
Scores.
Yay, score. You scored, Scott, with this event. Thank you.
Yeah, life 100.
Your body,
us.
that's
1.
right. Your body is kind of like, okay, I'll give you this one. This was a good idea. Like, yes. Reduced my body debt. Awesome. Yay. Right. Well, next big event by our star Scott is going to be a Firefly series. We're going to start watching together on the 24th, and then Scott will be presenting the first episode's reflection, Love Letters to Firefly, on the 28th. So hope to see y'all there. You've got to opt in on the Discord to be able to see the Firefly channel. You're like waving still. You're like, hello. So yeah, just keep that in mind for if you're not seeing the event up, that's because you haven't opted into the channel. We might need to change that.
I'll try to spread that as a reminder. I hadn't considered that the visibility is kind of
real specific.
Yeah.
I put an announcement up yesterday, but I only saw like 4 or 5 people like it. So I wonder if everybody just has their notifications turned off. But please look at the news to follow the link and opt into different things.
Oh, great. I will help reiterate that. Thanks for pointing it out.
Sweet. Okay, thank you, everybody. Yay, I'll miss this world.
Boy.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
I'm gonna head out as well and figure out some food. See yous.
Yeah, sounds
Good luck.
See you next time.
Bye. Hello.
Hey.
I was just standing there menacingly. Feel like I should sit down.
No. Oh no, that's good. I'm gonna shoot the camera back to another world here real quick.